Hello, I'm Vicki Alexander Harriet from the Marshall University of Management. I'd like to share with you a 4-part series taken from our symposium on deep green business, transforming consciousness to ensure sustainability and create heaven on earth. This symposium took place on the campus of Marshall University of Management in Fairfield, Iowa, July 6th and 7th, 2012, in the new Schwartz Gooch Sustainable Living Center. The premise of our symposium was that there must be a transformation of consciousness in order to truly embed sustainability in our companies and in our society. How can this transformation take place? What are the mechanics of implementing change? How have businesses and communities facilitated transformation? And what are the results of such a transformation? Join us for a discussion of these and other questions as we explore the role of consciousness in creating sustainable business and a sustainable world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a fabulous symposium on deep green business and the transformation of consciousness. The next presentation is going to be on how deep can we go in measuring sustainability, because one of the really crucial subjects is, I think, as we've learned today both in China and in the US, it's very important to consumers now to have an understanding of what they're buying or what they're living in. If it's in a building, if it's green, if it's sustainable. But how do we measure how successful we are in implementing these sustainability practices? I think Ken was the one who mentioned that almost every top company now has a chief sustainability officer. What's that person doing? How are they measuring whether the initiatives that they've introduced into the company are actually successful in making it more sustainable? And so, Professor Harry.
So welcome again, everyone. In the spring of last year, in 2001, I created a new course for our MBA specialization in sustainability called Measuring and Reporting on Sustainability. I taught it again this year. And by next year, it should take the form of a book, which I will title Metrics for Sustainability. It's more a description about how people are measuring sustainability. This talk is going to be a little different. For one, it's short, but I'm also going to focus more on questions and issues that remain, rather than telling you about how things are done in the moment. The question motivating this talk is that metrics for organizational sustainability address financial, social, and environmental issues. But is any of those more fundamental than the other? Environmental, social, governance, financial. In other words, would one of them drive the other aspects of organizational sustainability, making it more fundamental? Or are there other dimensions of organizations yet more fundamental than those three? Financial, social, environmental, these are the three aspects of sustainability. Does one of them drive the other, or this way? Or is there something deeper that might drive all of these? So this is the deep sustainability. This would be a more holistic basis for driving sustainability. So we're asking, is there a more holistic, integrative quality of organizations that, when affected, would drive all aspects of sustainability? Background for this question, a unit of analysis. In my book, I distinguish, first of all, let's make reference to the Brundtland Commission's definition of sustainability. What is often quoted as a characterization of sustainability was first presented as a definition of sustainable development. The unit of measurement was therefore, a unit of analysis was the nation or a region. But now metrics have proliferated for products. We just heard Ken Ross speaking about eco-labels. And there are metrics for companies. certification of green companies. There are 6 levels of analysis at which one can define metrics for sustainability. At the highest level of the nation, there are various sustainability indices, and I will come back to them at the end of my talk. There are, at the level of an ecosystem within a nation, one can define sustainability, and that's driven more by the original line of research in environmental science. For cities, there does not yet seem to be a system for certifying a city as a green city. This is an interesting area for research that I would like to see our own doctoral students pursuing. We should develop an index for green cities. At the level of the firm, and this is what I'm going to be focusing on in my brief remarks, there are several competing standards for a sustainable company. Within that, we can have, within a firm, there can be standards for certifying processes. For example, environmental management is certified by ISO 14001. And at the smallest level, is the certification of products, the various eco-labels put out by companies like Green Seal and so on. Well, I'm an organizational scholar, and so I'm a little more interested in sustainable business at the level of the organization. But as business professors, our professional interest is on products, processes, and organizations. Brief comment on product labeling before I go on. Product labeling and the criteria used for the various eco-labels tends to focus on materials, issues of toxicity, energy efficiency, and environmental effects, water consumption, a carbon footprint, and so on. But organizational certification goes bigger than that. The triple bottom line perspective is seen in the various methods of organizational certification. The people, planet, profit trichotomy is seen in ESG measures, environmental, social, and governance, put together with financial. The ESG is the people, planet part, the profit part is reflected in financial metrics. And that approach to defining sustainability derives from stakeholder theory. The idea that an organization will be more likely to survive, to sustain itself, if it is engaged effectively with all its various stakeholders. What are the different ways to measure sustainability of organizations? The Global Reporting Initiative is probably the most commonly known, but it in fact is not even a certification company. It is simply a list of recommended attributes that a company would report. And if you look very carefully at how they describe their A+, B+, B+ levels and so on, they're not really levels of sustainability at all. The GRI is, in my opinion, therefore, heavily overrated, if not misunderstood, as a method for evaluating corporate sustainability. Green Seal has just in the last year, and Underwriters Labs, come out with their own organizational standards, derived a bit from the GRI, but going a little more in more detail to the analysis of environmental impacts, cradle-to-cradle sustainability of products, and so on. Universities can be evaluated for their sustainability. The Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education has its sustainability tracking and rating system, STARS system. There is now the Ecological Footprint people who developed an ecological footprint for nations, have a product now that they offer for businesses to evaluate their ecological footprint. Walmart is known for its supplier sustainability assessment. And there was one more that I've run across but haven't really seen much information about. A group called Accountability is selling a standard. What is measured in these organization level sustainability metrics? they boil down almost all to financial, environmental, and social governance. It's ESG reporting together with a financial metric. What is financial? Fairly standard accounting metrics for the financial health of an institution. What are the environmental characteristics? Carbon footprint, toxicity across the product life cycle, recycling, impact on biodiversity. Social and governance. These derive from a liberal political perspective. It has to, apart from dealing with matters of health and safety, employee health and safety, the empowerment of diverse stakeholders and traditionally underrepresented groups, women and minorities, weighs heavily. The GRI demands an enormous amount of data broken down by gender, broken down by racial characteristics, and so forth. So, how much do these features of organizations drive sustainability? Stakeholder theory would tell us that you learn a lot more about the future survivability of a company by looking at environmental and social governance metrics than just looking at whether the company was profitable. I'll buy that. But the question here is, how deep can we go with these metrics? So, is any one of those, financial, social, environmental, is any one of those deeper than the others? Deeper in the sense that I put up on the board here, in that one of them will drive performance of the others. Here's a philosophy or a hypothesis for you. Richer companies have more money to put into measures that would make them look better socially and environmentally. So if you are performing well financially, that will drive your social and your environmental performance. We would like to think that it goes the other way, that if you perform well socially and environmentally, that will drive improved financial performance. That's the way to sell the ESG part of corporate reporting to companies that are mainly looking at the bottom line. So there really is a theoretical issue that needs to be addressed, at least amongst these. Well, what are the causal relationships? What's the path influences among these, the strength of influences amongst these different aspects of corporate sustainability. But once you start asking which one influences the other, the natural question that comes up is are there unaddressed attributes or deeper attributes that might be driving any of those? And that's the question about deep sustainability. Is there something else that drives all of these? A year ago, I had my students doing a sustainability project with a major R&D firm, not in Fairfield, but a very well-known, nationally known company. And I was extremely surprised. Our focus was going to be on employee health and wellness and metrics for employee health and wellness, because intuitively one might think that, well, maybe employee health and wellness is one of these things. That when employees are more healthy, when there's a deeper state of wellness, that will drive their ability, their sensitivity to their environment, their sensitivity to other people. It'll help make the company more profitable. Now, this was a company whose core business thrived on creativity and teamwork, and yet their metrics for health and wellness were obesity and smoking. And I thought, they're completely looking at the very superficial aspects of health and wellness. And yet there is a deeper quality of health and wellness that could drive even the core business processes of this major R&D firm. This was a major defense contractor, among others. So there's a huge opportunity for us who think more deeply about sustainability to start developing metrics even for health and wellness that have a more comprehensive effect on the company. But it was that example that made me think, well, what else is there that's deeper? What are the metrics for deep sustainability? At the most physical level, we have a company's financial results and their impact on the environment. Maybe social is deeper than that. But right now, the social metrics are almost nothing more than demographics, demographic characteristics of a company or some governance measures. What we were hearing about in yesterday's talks by Professor Harung and others who were looking at a more holistic quality of peak performers, they were starting to draw our attention to psychological aspects of the organization. At least in our study of the R&D firm, we were drawn to recognize the importance of creativity and teamwork as psychological attributes that would drive performance of the rest of the organization, and we believed even sustainability and awareness of sustainability. But deeper than the psychological attributes of creativity and teamwork, I think, are something to do with the qualities of the individual, that awareness, that the holistic integrative development of individuals that was associated with peak performers in the study that Professor Harung presented, and that he logically related to the sustainability of organizations through the behavior of individuals. So I think that that's a direction for us to think about, but I'm still, it needs more thinking, because those deep metrics still seem to use the individual as the unit of analysis. And I'm wondering whether even that would tap into emergent attributes at the organizational level. That's what I would really like to see. If we could do some research that helps us understand emergent attributes of organizations that are closely related to sustainability, those would be organization level metrics. PhD students, any of you interested in working on this? I think it would be a great subject for a dissertation, and I'm hoping that amongst the new crop of PhD students that we get this fall, I can find some takers. Talking about holistic qualities, peak performance, it is an attribute of quality of life. And maybe we can learn something by coming back to those national indices that have to do with measuring quality of life in the nation. We might learn something for organizational sustainability by looking at what was done 10, 15 years ago on quality of life measures for nations. The Calvert-Henderson Quality of Life Index that Hazel Henderson mentioned in her opening keynote address to this conference. There are a variety of others. The Environmental Performance Index, the Ecological Footprint, a Genuine Progress Index, the Green GDP, Human Development Index, Happy Planet Index, Legatum Prosperity. Okay, there's a lot of work out there. And it probably needs to be sifted through to see what, if any of it, would help us understand that deep aspect of organizations that relates to sustainability. I couldn't resist ending my talk with a unity chart, as we often do in our MUM lectures, where I present the superficial aspect of the talk, a more deep aspect, and the most profound level of the talk in terms of the inner qualities of the individual. At the superficial level, business reporting has in the past focused primarily on financial statements. More subtly, triple bottom line reporting adds social and environmental considerations. But the deepest level, on the level of the consciousness of an individual, is a recognition that transcendental consciousness, the inner basis of oneself, is the unified field of all the laws of nature and the seat of creative intelligence in human life. the most profound holistic level of this lesson, wholeness moving within itself, in unity consciousness, the most highly developed state of human awareness. A business person sees the holistic intelligence that is responsible for the interrelatedness of economic, social, and environmental success. And he or she spontaneously acts to advance the progress of life in an evolutionary direction. And that completes my talk on metrics for sustainability. Thank you very much.
So the first speaker this afternoon is an old friend of mine.
A friend of long-standing.
A friend of long-standing, that's right. He's from young at heart.
A young friend.
A young friend. And he's had many different careers over his lifespan. I first met him because he talked my late husband, Skip Alexander, into doing his PhD dissertation at Harvard on a little project that Bob was doing at the prison in Massachusetts, a high-security prison in Massachusetts, and he'd started a drug program there, and the people in this program were starting TM, and he wanted someone to do just a little research. He thought it would take a couple months, and 3 years later, the project was done. But it was a great study, and we're really grateful to Bob for giving us the opportunity to do that, because it produced a lot of very good data. His most recent incarnation is involved with True Market Solutions, and he's going to be telling you about that. And I think it's a really interesting business concept. It's really taking a lot of the ideas that we've been talking about in the symposium and applying them to real-world situations. So without further ado, Bob Ferguson.
Vicki, thank you very much. Terrific. Well, it's a really tremendous pleasure to be here among friends. Many of you I know, some of you I have yet to get to know. We have a fairly short amount of time, so I'm going to run through what amounts to an introduction to what we do at a company called True Market Solutions, which, as it says, works with small to medium-sized companies, but not really just those, but focuses on small to medium-sized companies to help them understand about sustainability and harvest the value of sustainability for profitability. And as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, you can only bring a person along to the next level from where their understanding is right now. They may need to be at Z, but if they're at A right now, you can't normally bring them from A to Z. It has to be A to B, B to C. The next, if they're here, the next level of understanding, the only thing they can go to is the next there, and then the next there, and the next there. So this company is based on the premise that we need to drive sustainability understanding in the sustainability conversation down to basically the Main Street level. When we say small to medium-sized companies, we're defining that as 25 to 50 to 1,000 employees. But in a recent, and as you'll see later on, in a recent sustainability circle we did in Burlington, the smallest company was Matt's Greenhouse, 4-acre greenhouse, under $1 million sales. The largest company was Siemens Energy, that makes all the wind turbine blades for North America. So, and it was really fascinating to see the interaction of those two entities, along with the City of Burlington and the Chamber of Commerce and a bank and Southeast Community College and the largest nonprofit organization. So the idea is that we create a cohort of 8 to 10 companies, organizations, entities, and we get together and we go through a standard curriculum about sustainability. And it's fairly sophisticated. It's fairly deep understanding. We all know that there's sort of bright green sustainability and deep green sustainability. Bright green is that wonderful thing that, hey, if we just do what we're doing better and more efficiently and all that, then the world will be hunky-dory. Deep green is, whoa, no matter how much better we're doing at what we're doing right now, that isn't going to get us where we want to go, because things really need to fundamentally shift in terms of consciousness and paradigms and models and everything else. It's very difficult to get a person from 0 to deep green, as we know. So we go through the window of bright green, if you will, give people a sense that, we can do better. And it's fascinating. It's been fascinating that once the conversation starts, it doesn't stop at the boundary of bright green. It bleeds into deep green. It bleeds into the possibility of something being different. But you got to take people. So the meditators in the audience, there's a story of Maharishi came out and he had this technique for enlightenment, and he said he was horrified and perhaps bemused and finally kind of acquiesced to the fact that he was talking about enlightenment and people were saying that, oh, this technique is great, it got rid of my headaches. Well, when you have a headache, what's the one thing you want to have done before anything else happens? You want to get rid of your headache. Your finger's in the vice. The only thing that you're concerned about is getting your finger out. So it's a little bit like that. It's also interesting to me that the world has shifted and changed, and that I unfortunately missed the conversation yesterday afternoon, but this huge tectonic shift that we heard about this morning and Hazel Henderson talked about, this is really shifting people, and even if they don't know a lot about it, they're feeling the impact of this. They're being impacted, they're being buffeted by this. And so it provides a really interesting opening for us. So again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these slides. I'm going to run, a lot of the slides, I'm going to run through them. And again, just imagine yourself as a person in the business community in Burlington, Iowa, or Keokuk, or Fort Madison, or wherever, and you kind of know something is going on. And by the way, don't discount how much sophistication is actually in some of those smaller towns. I was shocked to find the level of understanding on quite a number of people. But the average company is still saying, is this really real? Yeah, maybe I know it's real, but how can I possibly incorporate this? What does it mean? There's a lot of fear and stuff like that. So this is the only slide where we talk about all the freaky stuff that's happening, and that this is the stick slide. That these are the trends that we're going to have to deal with no matter what. And then we bring them to a more of an understanding of, so what does the world need now? It needs all these things. John, I always appreciate hearing you talk when I think of this slide, because really when you look at a new paradigm for the world, these characteristics are essentially an aspect of that, or they really are the result of a new way of measuring productivity, measuring happiness, measuring progress. So, the local is the new global and all that. So we introduce that. And then we say, so what does it mean for the US economy? We don't quite yet apply it to them. We talk about the McKinsey report, saying that I don't know how much, I can't recall exactly the investment, about $100 billion or something like that, could equate to 1.2 trillion in gross energy savings. And energy savings are real dollars, right? Is there any difference between a watt and a megawatt? There really isn't any difference. If you're not using a watt, then it's as good as having produced one and using it. So we talk about what does this really, an opportunity within change. We can look at change as a threat, or we can look at change as a big, huge opportunity. I love Hazel's, assertion that stressors are great, because without stressors, nothing changes, right? If you don't feel any felt need for change, why would you want to change? I mean, it's against the laws of nature. I mean, the ping pong ball just doesn't go hopping off the table and hit the ceiling. Nature is conservative from that standpoint, law of least action. So things are hunky-dory and they're just fine, nothing's going to change. So the stressors need to come to boot us out of our trajectory. So we do a little case in point. Here's a deep retrofit of the Empire State Building, which is pretty cool. And I just read an analysis that while the inside stuff hasn't been done, therefore they're not harvesting all of these savings. The shell, the predicted savings from the shell, they're at 105% of those predicted savings right now. So this is a 3-year payback retrofit of the most iconic building in the United States, the building probably most people know about more than anything else. And this is what the building manager, Malkin, the president of the holding company that owns the building, this is his analysis. That if we don't change, we're toast. for roadkill. So this is not optional. This is something that absolutely needs to happen. And what we try to do is use credible third-party witnesses to make the points that rattle people's world a bit. So then we start talking about what does this mean for your business. Now we'll introduce it in a moment. We use Chris Laszlo's book, Embedded Sustainability: The Next Big Competitive Advantage, and I believe the department uses that also. Sustainability has meant to a lot of people risk mitigation, in other words, how not to get nailed by regulation. Then they realize, oh gee, this is a way of making more money. But that's just the very, very grossest level of benefit. But we do talk about risk mitigation. If you don't understand this stuff, then you'll pay the price one way or the other. This AB 1103, it's a regulation in California that now states that over buildings over a certain size, when you either release the building substantially or you sell it, you have to do an energy analysis and you publish that analysis. So you've got a commercial building in downtown Oakland and it's a 43 on a basis scale of 100. And you've got a neighboring building that's a 73 on a basis, a scale of 100. Whose building is going to lease up faster? Whose building is worth more? And this is no place to run, no place to hide. You can't. This is not optional. In California, if with certain triggering events, this is what happens. You don't want to be caught, unprepared, like some companies did. Where the European Union for years published new regulations for electronics. Well, when the regulations finally hit, the good news is 60% of the companies were prepared. The bad news is 40% weren't. For years, these things had been there, and they still didn't pay attention to them, and they lost huge amounts of market share. So we talk about that. We talk about Walmart. Now, anyone who has gone into a Walmart lately totally realizes that there is absolutely a laughable difference between what's actually happening in Walmart in the aggregate and these goals. This does not invalidate the power of these goals. And in fact, a goal that is only a little incremental change from where you are right now is not much of a goal, right? If you're going to have big discontinuous change, you've got to do a big, hairy, audacious goal where you have no idea how you're going to do it. And that drives even the 5 and 10% incremental change, where if you're as big as Walmart, that shakes the world. So we say that that's real. Now, do they do it all the time? No. I mean, are they great about everything? No. But are those actually their goals? Yeah, those are really the goals. And that's both a change agent and an expression of change. Right here in our own little town, we did one of the sustainability circles in Fairfield, and Agroplastics was here. The stated reason why they were here is that they realized that John Deere was, incontrovertibly on this path. And if they didn't get on it, they weren't going to maintain their favored vendor relationship with John Deere. And so, they said, here we are. Now, funny little story. 7 years before, they had gotten in lighting, retrofit a proposal. They went through the whole program not remembering they had that proposal in their file cabinet. The guy who does our lighting, the nature of the thing is we bring local experts in specific areas like lighting, HVAC, and all that. So they come in and talk about the thing. Then they get the chance to do free analyses for the participants. Then it's a business development thing. If they do a good job, they get business. So Chad heard out at the corner of the year that Agroplastics, he says, I saw those guys 7 years ago. I wonder if they still have got that thing. So he called up Lori. Timing is right. Again, they made it through the whole thing without even remembering. So I asked him a couple months ago, how's it going, Chad? He goes, we're done. I said, how much did it cost him? $200,000. I said, how much is it going to save him every year? He said, $100,000. So they were sitting there with this proposal in their filing cabinet for the last 7 years that they could have made $700,000, a net of $700,000, or much more than that because it was free after the first couple of years, right? It didn't get paid for itself. We go over the myths about sustainability. Now this is really fascinating. GreenBiz felt constrained to do this thing in November of 2009 which I would imagine that this is the kind of conversation that was more common even just a few years ago. Fast forward to the latest MIT Sloan Management Review that shows that 31% of the companies that they reviewed are saying that sustainability is contributing to profits. Not sustainability is good for the fishes and the whales. It's not something that is nice and we're getting some backwash benefit of green patina. 31% say it's actually building profitability. 70% have permanently placed sustainability on management's agenda. Talked about embedded sustainability. In my view, if a person is going to read one book on the drivers of sustainability, this book probably is the richest, most dense, most theory-driven, and most practical. He's written 3 books. Why, how, the reason for it, anecdotal stuff in the second book, and here's building theory, based on 3 predominant theories of change and disruption. And market segmentation, all that. He's basically boiled the whole thing down to you can derive all of the elements that are driving sustainability with 3 macro trends. Number 1, resource scarcity. Resources are becoming more scarce. Even if we're discovering new resources, natural gas, everything, we're still living in a world that if everyone wanted to live with current technology, current use, you'd need 5 or 6 worlds to run India and China. So I'm incontrovertible. The second is radical transparency. Ken's beautiful example of how absolutely nailed Kashi was by lying to their customers, lying by omission. They didn't lie saying, they just didn't say, they didn't bother to say that their natural line was all GMO and all that kind of stuff. But a lie nonetheless. In the age that we have right now, there is utterly no place to run and no place to hide. And you combine that with increased customer expectations. You see, we heard a lot about how much more are people willing to pay for organic, how much more are people willing to pay for products that are good for the environment. His contention is that how much more people are willing to pay is shrinking, 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 shrinking. In fact, most people don't want to pay more for that. They don't think they should have to pay more. They're telling the companies, you figure out how to make a product that is better and cheaper rather than maybe not quite as good and way more expensive, but it is green. And so, and that goes for companies, it goes for individuals. So those are the 3 macro trends. And these are the 7 sources of business value that Laszlo defines. It's kind of a cool little graphic to have everything nested in itself. Mitigating risk and reducing waste, non-product, waste. People have a hard time sometimes with waste, but a way of thinking about it is when you're making something, you make product and non-product. Can you sell non-product?
No.
So how much non-product actually is okay? How much non-product do you want to make while you're making your product? And any rational person would say, none. We prefer to make no non-product that we can't get paid for. But then it goes on to differentiating products, entering new markets, protecting and enhancing brand, influencing industry standards. How do you get a pole position in industry? You do things that are so radically wonderful that everyone has to play catch up with you. You become immune to a regulation because you're always 3 or 4 steps ahead of the regulators. That's the way to do it, in my view. And in order to get that done, in order to get those first 6 done, it normally can't be done with business as usual. You've got to come in with what he calls radical innovation. The capacity to disrupt, the capacity to not worry about stranded assets, the capacity to say, listen, it's going to be worth it. We're going to go for it no matter what. And that, interestingly, with Scott, what's the driver? What drives what? Radical innovation is what, that happening in a firm is what sucks people out of bed in the morning and makes them want to camp out at the office, and they can't stand not going to work, and they love it, love it, love it, and it doesn't matter what's happening, bombs dropping and everything. They're there because it's a fun, thing to do, and we are goal-striving mechanisms. My belief is that we are goal-striving mechanisms. We just love, and you make a person, how to make a person miserable? Just stop growth. It doesn't matter if they live in a hut or a palace. You stop growth and they become instantly miserable, no matter how much they have, no matter how much they've accomplished. We are built that way. So my feeling is that if you can get radical innovation and really exciting things going on in an organization, you really got some great stuff going on. Now, here's an example of what we would call bolted-on sustainability, but a rather spectacular one. This is a client in San Leandro. This was a little tortilla company, about a $100 million company, about 80 or 90 employees. Here's their sustainability team. When we get the companies together, we do the curriculum. They have 2 seats per company. They go back and they build their sustainability team. They build a sustainability plan, which is the purpose of the 6 months, not just to get together and chit-chat, but to build a plan. We encourage them to institute one project while we're doing it, just so they get their feet moving and they kind of get a sense of how to do it. So this isn't their whole plan, but these are just 3 elements of their plan. They looked at their MasterCard. They found 2 inches of space on the top they didn't need. They found a slip sheet. They had changed the plastic on the packages so they didn't stick to each other 7 years before, 5 years before, but they were still sticking the slip sheet in because that's the way it was done. They took that out. They noticed that there was 100-pound cardboard. They're shipping tortillas, not tigers, so they dropped that to 30. They're saving $450,000 in the next 5 years just because they paid attention to their MasterCard, which is one of the fruits of doing this. The second thing is they decided that they would take waste from 3% to 1%. They had a 5-year plan, and last time we checked, about a year and a half in, they were more than 2/3 of the way to their 5-year plan, saving another $250,000. They did a lighting retrofit, saving $175,000. Now the total cost of the program to get them going was $6,000 plus $24,000 for the lighting retrofit. That's $30,000. A $200,000 a year eternal return on $30,000 investment isn't really such a bad return. And that's just doing what we would call bolted on stuff. It's just taking a look at what we're doing and doing it a little bit better. Now, if you look at how sustainability drives into an organization, I mean, this is one schema, but you basically need to go from a few people getting excited about it to some little beta programs, to attention on the part of management, to commitment on the part of management, to externalizing the process to the supply chain, and then building into the DNA. So you cannot do anything, we'll hear from Bill, you cannot but do this, because the DNA of the organization won't permit you to do anything but that. So and so from that standpoint, you're looking at not sustainability as a cost, maybe a good cost, but a cost where you become healthier and it's really good and you're an ethical company and it's all great like that. You go from that to sustainability being your business strategy. The very core of your business strategy is sustainability. Everything flows from there. And here is an example of a company that did that. Fairmount Minerals, an industrial sands company. They are a mining company that comes in and rips up the face of the earth, takes sand out, and sells it. You really have, I mean, it's a stretch to think that they could become sustainable. They did an appreciative inquiry, all-company deal in 2005. They took the commitment, took the plunge. Chuck Fowler, the owner of the company, said, okay, we're going to do this thing, burn ships in the harbor. They have absolutely killed the bear financially. They're growing at phenomenal rates. Their promise to a community is when we come in and when we finish, you will have a better, more biodiverse, more interesting, and more valuable landscape than when we arrived. Now think of it. 2 sands companies come to get your business. One says, we're going to dig a hole, we'll pay some wages, and when we leave, you'll have a hole. These people say, we're going to come in, we're going to extract sand, we're going to do it in the most effective way possible, we're going to connect with your community, we're going to decide what we're going to do with this big hole to mitigate it, to turn it into wetlands or whatever like that. We'll do it all together, and when we leave, you will have a better situation. Who wins the contract? Hands down, obviously. So They've done a phenomenal job. This is a great example of embedding sustainability into an organization, not applying it to the outside. So this is the kind of things that we do. You know, someone told me a while ago that, and I believe it, he said, if you want to progress, converse. If you want to progress more, converse more. What I really truly believe is happening in our little peer learning communities is that people are learning how to talk to each other. They're looking around just as our human beings. You know, I had a pair of pants, I'll admit it, I had a pair of pants that weren't hemmed right. My pants were about 1/4 of an inch too high. I was walking through O'Hare Airport. What was I looking at? My cuffs, everyone else's cuffs. Who cares? But we as human beings are so dialed in to what is and what the norm is that even if our flipping pants are 1/4 inch too high or 1/2 inch too high or whatever, we feel the impact of it. So one of the cool things about getting people together in a peer learning circle is that you've got all these entities, and everyone is looking around the building or the room at the other person saying, "Thank God, thank God, thank God, I'm not crazy. Look at all these people who are doing this. I must be okay." And it's only when we feel okay, when we feel like something is normal, natural, and comfortable for us, will we actually do it. That's one of the great, in my view, releasing mechanisms. So here is, we were outside the Siemens blade plant. That is a little cross-section of part of the blade way down the thing. We got into the base of the blade. There were 25 of us. We were sitting in the base of the blade, and there was 4 feet of room above our head, or 5 feet of room above our head. Sitting. Storage container, we could live in here. So this is what Alan Lewis, the operations manager, had to say about the experience. And again, we're talking about true market solutions, but I believe that any peer learning environment set up correctly is going to engender this kind of result. And we got Matt, we've got Matt's greenhouse, biggest one, smallest one. I love this. You have to know Matt, you know, to say, "I want everyone to know that there's nothing in this process," paraphrasing him, "I couldn't have done before, but I think it's important to understand. I didn't." And so this is what stimulated him. He put he's showing the barrier that goes at the top, you know, right beneath all of the, or right at the level of the watering things. He said, "I've known about this energy screen for years and years and years. The payback is stupidly short. Did I do it? No. Why? I don't know why I didn't do it. But I went into the thing and I said, well, gee, I should do that." He said, "Not only am I saving a lot of energy, my plants are growing better because it creates a better growing environment," which, you know, is one of the fruits of embedded sustainability. You get all kinds of unintended good consequences. My final and favorite, actually, there's one little tiny video I'm going to show at the end. My final and favorite story is this. This is Cryotech's plant. This is an old Chevron fertilizer plant retrofitted to make acetate-based de-icers, environmentally friendly de-icers, basically de-icers that are made of salts, of vinegar, like vinegar. There are these wonderful advertisements of these bridges that have fallen down and everything, and the tagline is, "Change your de-icer, not your bridge." And so these are geese, you know, landing the Mississippi River's right over the left of the trees there. And so they were in the last circle in Fort Madison, and we did this NREL plug load survey, and we did a fun thing. I'll take credit on inventing this about 2 hours, you know, in the middle of the night before we did it. I said, "How am I going to make a plug load survey exciting?" So I put a bunch of lines down and a bunch of things that you'd find in an office, and then put some things you'd find in an office with a bunch of little lines, and put it on cardstock. And we were at the Fort Madison City Hall, and we all went around with our cards all around the City Hall looking at things that were plugged in. Well, the champion finder, Scott Fezzik from Pinnacle Foods, found in 8 offices 133 different things that were plugged in, some of which had a 1/2 inch coating of dust on them. They've been used for years. They were still plugged in, sucking energy. It had 34 different discrete kinds of items and 133 of them, you know, in 8 offices. Well, you know, for a de-icing company, last winter was not a good situation. You know, no snow, no ice in the continental U.S. So the president came in from California and said, hey, we got to tighten our belts. You know, it's been a tough winter. They just did the plug load survey. John Moles, the chief engineer, said, timing is everything. So they took their powerful little green team, they fanned out across the company. Everyone got the NREL survey. Everyone did it. And the result was this. This is actually a picture of a pink telephone note. Don Hogan, one of the team members, Christian from Alliant Energy would like to speak to you. So she called him up, he called her up and said, what's up? He says, Mr. Hogan, we have a little problem here. We've been noticing your electricity bills and we think there's something wrong with your meter. We want to come and check your meter because your energy bill is half of what it usually is. They did a plug load survey, 0 capital expenditure, just a change in awareness, and they dropped the non-production energy consumption of that entire plant by 50% in under 4 weeks.
One of the case studies, Bill Witherspoon, who has had an interesting career alternating between being an artist and being a businessman, and so decided into his last swing at things that he would create a business that was a work of art. And I think that is what he's done, not only in terms of what he sells, but in terms of how he does it. And
thank you for the kind words. You know, the truth of it all is that the whole thing emerged out of total failure. In 2002, I realized that the previous 6 companies that I had helped to formed and had run had in some fundamental way been failures. Now, failure is not a cruel word, but we all know that out of destruction, or rather that destruction must occur before change can occur. And artists typically aren't afraid of failure because they destroy stuff all the time, you know. And they only make one painting or one sculpture or one piece of music or one book. They just keep doing it over and over again, and the old stuff they let go. So it wasn't horrible to realize that it was failure. But it was a fresh beginning. And I said to myself, okay, you're 60 years old, you gotta start a business. You can't go back out to the desert and paint because you've still got kids in college and all the rest. I mean, this is real practical stuff, right? So you're gonna have to move forward. So what are you gonna do? It's gotta be different. None of this other stuff you've done has really worked. Yeah, it's the old way and it's all that, but it wasn't satisfying for me or anybody else, totally. So I thought about it. First, I wanted to be an artist. So I said, all right, forget about paper, paint, sculpture. Make a beautiful corporation. Not company, corporation. I thought, a beautiful corporation? That is total, forgive me, BS. It doesn't exist, it can't exist. It's a total anomaly, it's an oxymoron. And once I realized it was an oxymoron, I liked it. I thought, okay, that'll be cool. Let's go after a beautiful corporation. But more fundamentally, I thought, well, how do I go about it? Where would I like to be? Do I like to work for somebody? No. Do I like to be told what to do? No. Do I like to know what's going around, happening? Yeah. Do I like to make money? Yeah. Do I like to be appreciated? Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Went through all that sort of stuff. And ended up thinking that what really had to be done was create an environment where everyone would be an owner, an entrepreneur, a participant, a full-on egalitarian kind of environment. Now, I didn't know, okay, so then start the work. And we started, and it was 1 people, 2 people, 3 people, 5 people. Pretty soon we started to get a little bit of breathing space, and we started to think seriously about how to really structure things. This was back in the days of, remember, Enron, okay? And I remember thinking about Enron. How the heck could that possibly happen? You know, and that was also the time when we started talking about corporations as living organisms, you know, and all that. And I didn't have a problem with them being living organisms because I love biology and I've got a lot of training there, and I think it's a great model and we should look into it. So I said, well, where's the DNA? Huh? Is it the SEC? Is it the trade associations? Is it the operating agreements? Where's the DNA? There isn't any. There's nothing in these corporations, or is there? What gives rise to? What guides? What's the blueprint? What determines the outcome? The only thing I could think of is the people, the cells, the units, the individuals. It's the culture that is the DNA. That's how I thought about it. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. And then, where's the culture come from? Is it top down? I love the story of Philip Morris in the 50s. You had to smoke if you were going to be a manager. It wasn't just that you had to smoke, you had to love it. Okay? You had to love it. That's how powerful culture is. Look at the mafia, look at the culture. Big organization, man, look at the culture. Top down. Then there's bottom up. Bottom up culture. So, where to go? Okay, then came a bunch of cultural principles. And I'm happy to say these things are really one word. There are 5 of them. They have worked for us. We have not had to go beyond this. One thing that you pointed out was growth, personal growth. We have a few things. We have a piece of paper at the factory, chiseled in stone. And one of them, the first thing chiseled in stone is, if you aren't growing, go home. If we aren't growing, shut it down. There's no point in spending our lives doing anything if we're not growing, because that's the purpose of being here. So, okay. So given that, we've identified 5 principles. I'm going to try and get through these very quickly. Number 1 is transparency, and it is number 1. If there were only one thing, transparency can absolutely transform things. Transparency means that. It means everyone knows everything. Think about it. Everyone knows everything. Everything. All the finances, all the decisions, all of the intuitions, all that's going on within the company, everyone knows it. Do they just know the sort of the big picture? No, they know it to a deep level of detail. Think about how that would be. I mean, it's extraordinarily liberating. Knowledge is power. What does it say about the power structure right now? Everybody knows everything? Where's the power? It's everywhere. There's a correlate, and that is everyone should be able to do everything. Now, come on. No way. I can't even do Photoshop. I'm an artist, and I'm no good. So that's not literally true, but it is our orientation, and we still are bound to go in that direction. Why? Because the alternative is, oh, I only need to be able to do what I need to do my job. That's a pigeon hole. It's death. So everyone needs to know everything. That's an absolute. We don't back off that. And that is institutionalized. Every Friday afternoon, the whole company stops from 1:30 till 3:30. It's even going till 4. And we go through, number 1, all of our finances, which are updated. We go through our metrics, which is this huge, long Excel document, if you will, which we project, and it tells us everything we want. How many elevators did we make? What's the cash? How many orders were shipped? How many miles did the Skymobile drive? How many architects were everything anybody would want to know. And not only does it go vertically that way through all these little points, it goes back about 8 years. So we can graph every single thing and see what's happening. and we do it, and we look at it. So this is a pretty efficient way for everybody to know everything, and everybody's making their reports. It's not one person does it, we all report to each other. It's very dynamic, it lasts at least a half hour, sometimes we can shorten it down, and so forth. Then we have decisions. Significant decisions the whole company needs to relate to. Somebody needs to hire somebody. And so those people are prepared, they make a case for hiring, whatever it is, okay? So that is standardized. Let's go to number 2, flat management. No hierarchy. What you might call management by facilitation. We have no titles, no VPs, no managers, no supervisors, no nothing. Now come on. We're a manufacturing company. We've got lots of customers. We have to ship on time. We've got a whole lot of stuff. We're like other people in that way, but we have no management. How does that happen? We have something we call facilitation. We have a team of, say, 11 people in production. And by the way, those 11 people rotate through all 47 jobs, if you will, that occur in production. They all know how to do each one of those. And every week, there are 2 facilitators who are the coordinators, because we gotta stay coordinated. One is left from last week, and the other is new this week. And this new person will be left into next week. So we rotate. It's alphabetical. Guess what happens when everybody has to be the facilitator? There's no arguments. Everybody understands. Everybody experiences it. Everybody grows. Everybody supports. Oh man, I've got to do it this week. And it all works fine. And in the context of transparency, where the power is uniform, where the information is uniform, there's no agendas. There's no hidden agendas. There's no ladder to climb. We had well, I won't tell a story. I mean, but there's just literally, there's no ladder. There's no reason. But nothing can be achieved by hoarding information or controlling information. Everything can be achieved by sharing and by cooperating. Next, we'll get to consensus-based decision-making. Now, anybody who's been in business for any length of time and who really has got their feet on the ground knows that this is nonsense. Knows it can't be done. Take a bunch of people from disparate parts of a company, put them together and expect to get a consensus. Are you kidding? It can't be done. And they're right. It can't be done. But think about this. If everything is transparent and everybody knows everything already and an issue comes up, we're all already on the same page. If things are flat, I'm not trying to beat you out because where am I going to go? And so what happens? Consensus then becomes this extraordinarily powerful tool where everybody brings their life experience, their intelligence, their sensitivity, their compassion, everything, all of us, to focus on what's at hand. It's unbelievable. It's a way of collecting all of this experience that's everything from the environment and bringing it to bear, and it all happens gracefully, smoothly. Do we ever get heated? A little bit, yeah. But you know what? I have never seen one person put down another at the Sky Factory. Not once. Never, not in the meetings, and not in small groups. So we also have consensus at small groups. Graphics, there are 4 of them, 5 of them, depends. There's all these teams, by the way. So you might be on this team, and this team, and this team, and it goes like that during the day. Graphics have got an issue, they sit together, they come up with consensus. Is it something that needs to go to the whole group? Great. It goes to Friday. If there's something in finance or some emergency, or we got a problem customer in Europe and everything's falling apart, or this, and we have to do something really quick, and everybody needs to be involved. I'm just trying to think of an example, but everybody needs to, we ring the cowbell, and all of us come together, stand up, you can't sit down, and in 7 minutes we've had the meeting, everybody goes back to work. Service. Service, I would like to put service here, but it doesn't fit numerically. But it is the fulcrum point on which we teeter-totter. Service is the key here. And there's two kinds of service. Contractual. Vicki and I know each other for a long time. We pat each other's back. We serve each other. You're a customer. I take care of you. I expect loyalty. You give it to me. No big deal. I have my family. I take care of them. They take care of me. That's contractual service. If we all do it. There's another kind of service. Selfless. Why am I taking care of this person? You don't even ask, in fact. Somebody else standing here says, why is he doing it? What's he get? What's she get out of that? What's going on there? There's no answer. We're taking care of each other. To my way of thinking, that is the best barometer of any organization. The extent to which the participants engage in selfless service to each other. And when that happens, you get out of bed, you don't even think about bed. You just go and you enjoy, and you go home happy. And you don't go home stressed, and you don't burn out. And all I can say is that this undercurrent keeps rising. The tide of selflessness keeps rising. This is what we've got above our door. The purpose of our business is to enrich and sustain life. You see that every time you walk in the Sky Factory. It's a big thing. That sums it up. There's another little corollary that sits down below it. We before me. It's a team-oriented deal. We before me. Last is performance. Performance is simple. We don't have performance reviews. Why not? Because we don't have a hierarchy. We're all shoulder to shoulder. We don't need them. We don't have 6-month or yearly performance reviews. Everybody knows everything. You cannot hang out in the Sky Factory for more than a week. Maybe you could get by, and not be a part of the whole thing. If you're sick or something, everybody knows it. If you're having trouble at home, enough people know, and they give you your space, whatever it is. But it's just performance is the bottom line. Now, performance is a big word, actually. First, we have to perform for ourselves. That means I have to be growing. And that's the bottom line for my performance. Second, I have to perform for my family, if you will, and myself in this sense. I have to make some money. I have to be compensated. I have to take care of that. I have to perform for my coworkers. How do I do that? I facilitate their needs. I remember one profound thing that Maharshi said years ago in Vitsnau or someplace like that. And that, he's basically said this. I don't have to tell the whole story. Authority is not given. You will get authority to the extent that you service the needs of those around you. Bingo. We've got all kinds of authorities at the Sky Factory. We've got all kinds of leaders. There's a whole, leadership. I'm the leader. Is everybody there? It isn't that kind of leadership. That's kind of an old definition of leadership. I go ahead and I'm the, and everybody follows. It isn't that way. These people are growing in leadership constantly. But it's, again, a distributed leadership. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a very cool experience. So we also have to perform for the corporation, this thing. Why? We want it to live. We want it to be profitable. We want it to have a good reputation. We want it to grow and so forth. We have to perform for the community. What's the community? It's Fairfield, Jefferson County, Iowa, America, the world. And to do that, ever since we got profitable, we've been putting money into a nonprofit, a 501(c)(3). Sustainability Research Institute, SRI, is the one that we're using now. We put several $100,000 a year into that. And we focus that on a mission. And the mission is food production. Would somebody be able to get me a little bit of water, because I'm either talking too loud or losing my throat or something. Am I talking too loud? No. Okay, you can hear me okay, and all that. Okay, so what are we doing there? We just took one battle. There are so many wonderful things. There's so much that needs to be done. And we just decided, let's stay focused. So we are fighting, on the one hand, against GMOs, proliferation, for example, CAFO proliferation. And we are educating in the area of alternative farming techniques and technologies, the whole American meat, grass-fed meat program, a number of different things. We have our organic garden out at the Sky Factory, which is moving ahead and will, within maybe 2 years for sure, be feeding all of us, all 40 families, with their vegetable needs and their eggs and chicken and that sort of thing. So that's okay. That's enough. Performance the whole way, all deep. Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Now, all this sounds great. It's very lofty. I'm not telling you these are all practical things. What if you think about it for one moment? Every single one of these things plugs into being an owner. An owner, the whole business is transparent for the owner. Flat management, of course it's flat. I'm the boss. I'm the owner, right? Consensus, yeah, I think about it from different points of view and I talk about it's consensus. It's all happening in here. Service, yeah. Performance, of course I have to perform, right? But it's a little bit different. But the key is that what we are doing is creating a culture of owners. We don't want any employees. And you'll see in a minute, we really don't want any employees. Okay, now, there's an old saying, put your money where your mouth is. Let's cut all this. Let's move to the money, okay? Because if you're going to ask people, and I truthfully, what I do know is that there are lots and lots of people who behave like owners their whole life. They are not owners. And it's a bit of a tragedy, or a travesty. It's a sin, in my opinion, because they are not being treated appropriately. That's how I would say it. One of the greatest engineering feats of the last decade was a large company who went incredibly green through engineering modifications, big company. Really did an unbelievable job. And then the recession came along, and in a flash, in a heartbeat, they laid off 25%. Did those people belong to a sustainable company? What did they think when that happened? So there is this important aspect of social sustainability as well as engineering. Okay, so compensation. There are two kinds of compensation, cash and wealth. Cash is short-term, you get it, you spend it, you save a little bit. Wealth is something it takes a long time, you build it, or relatively long time, you build it over time. You know what I'm saying, right? Equity in your house is a market goes up if it goes up. I'm not saying that's great, but that's a kind of wealth, you know. And over here, salary. So we have that. Salary, everybody at the Sky Factory has a salary. Is that something to write home about? It's okay. It's okay. It's good. People can have a house, they can have cars, they can raise families and so forth. But there's something more. we also have profit sharing. And then there's one more place where cash comes from, and we just had it, and that's distribution. That distribution, this is salary, and here's wealth up here. Sorry, and this is based on ownership, right? And distributions are tied to ownership, okay? Now, here's how it works at the Sky Factory, profit sharing. Every month, we do a pro forma operating statement, P&L, profit and loss. And we get a net profit. Immediately, we don't publish that. We take 50% of our monthly net profit, we bring it above the line and put it in the profit sharing account for that month. So, let's say in the month of March, we've got $300,000 in the profit sharing account. That is then to be distributed to the 40 employees at the Sky Factory in the month of April. Now, how do we distribute it? We have a formula. The formula is my salary over total salary. Got it? Remember I said we don't like to hire people? Think about it. If this goes up, what happens to my share? It goes down, doesn't it? Do you think people look very carefully at the situation? You bet. And guess what they do? They are so open and wide open and prepared and ready to make incremental changes, to make little cost savings, to do this, to get a better system. I'll give you a quick example. Month of March was a big month. Month of March, we shipped twice our average. Our average has been growing, but we shipped twice our average. What we had shipped in September, October, November, December, roughly. In March, we shipped twice. No Saturdays, no Sundays, no evenings. How did we do it? Was everybody laying around the other times? No. But everybody had been preparing for this with lean, effectively. Incremental changes and improvements. Plus, everybody flooded in. The call went, hey, we got a big month. Accounting came in, graphics came in. Anybody who had an hour they could devote came in and did the thing. Everybody knows how to do everything. Graphics knows how, our PR person is great at making elevators. You don't know what an elevator is, but it doesn't matter, okay? It's aluminum, and you know, you'd never expect her to know how to do it. But everybody joined in, and you know. Now, so we've got $300,000 in the account. Do we distribute it? No. We have three things that have to happen first. Number one, we got to take care of our customers. Number one principle in business, or one of the number one principles. There are a lot of them. And in order to do that, we have to ship to our people on time, not a day late. 7, 8 years ago, we couldn't get, for the life of us, we could not get all our shipments out. There was always an explanation, but there was always at least one late. Somebody had the wise idea and said in the group meeting, well, why don't we just not pay ourselves a profit sharing if we're late? Ooh. And everybody thought and said, yeah, that should probably work. And guess what? 8 years later, we have never had a single late shipment. Wow. And guess what else? Guess what it takes to not have a late shipment? The whole chain. Graphics has got to be on. Everybody has to be plugged in. And there's one corollary rule, sub-rule, and that is, if you're having trouble and you aren't going to make it, and you don't ask, you are in deep doo-doo. But if you ask, you're clear. So we communicate, okay? All right, so number one is the late shipments. Number two, we gotta look after ourselves. We gotta stay solid. years ago, 8 years ago, we had just gotten profitable and everything was sketchy. And you know, we're dealing with new product. We didn't know whether anybody was going to want sky ceilings and all that sort of stuff. We didn't know, you know, there was nothing, no precedent. So we said, all right, if we have trouble, what should we do? Let's say people stop buying. Should we stick together or should we let people go? So plan B, you know, these things happen. And we all said, let's stick together come hell or high water. Okay, what do? We don't know what we'll do. We'll grow ginseng in the parking lot or something. Okay, fine, doesn't matter. But we have to prepare. So we said, we will have 6 months of total operating expenses in the bank at all times. We will never drop below. If we drop below that figure, which when you've got 40 employees and a lot of telephones and a lot of more loans, and we don't have that many, but you know, all that, that means all that. That's getting to be a pretty big nut. If we drop below that in our bank balance, then we don't distribute. Do you think people mind cash flow? Watch it. Do you think people understand cash flow? In fact, Andy Bargerstock is coming this month for another 9-lesson, 1-hour early morning financial literacy programs, because we got 10, 12 new people since the last time and we all forget stuff anyway. So that's how we take care of the corporation and ourselves. It's our job security. Guess what happens when you have lots of money in the bank? Guess who comes?
Bankers.
Bankers, yeah. All the bankers love, they're there, you know? And how did we get it? It was there because we wanted to take care of ourselves and be, what? Was it sustainable? I think so. I think that's all we wanted. Last thing, last thing is we have to take care of the legal living corporation, that entity. What does that mean? You know that you can have a great bottom line and no cash. You've heard of people having that happen to them. Their customers haven't been collecting their bills, for example, and they go under, they go bankrupt, and yet they were profitable the whole way down, right? It can happen. They weren't watching their cash flow. So the third rule is Sky Factory must have positive cash flow for the last 12 weeks, or we don't distribute. Then we do distribute. Now, let me just give you the bottom line on distribution real quick. In the last 8 years, the lowest has been 50%, and the highest has been 67%. That means 50% of my annual salary, your annual salary, you have gotten through these monthly distributions. That's significant. That's lifestyle. That's not the mortgage, it's not the car payment, it's life. It's, you know, what you want to do. Okay, now let's shift from there up to this question of ownership. We don't know how, we didn't know what, nobody at the Sky Factory has ever built a huge company, right? We're all little people. So we asked a bunch of advisors to tell us how big could the Sky Factory become. And they told us 200 million market valuation, no problem. That would mean about 100 million a year in sales, right? Okay, good. So the question is, and we're on our way, by the way, who's going to own all that? Is that going to be Bill? Bill's the founder. Bill starts with 100%, right? And Bill is not about to give any of it away. He did that in 6 previous companies. The first one he gave 50% away and 25% to MIU, which it still owns, and that company still runs. But guess what? 1 year later, none of those people were there. So he's not going to give it away, but he does, you'll see. So we discussed that, and here's what came out of it. 40%, 30, and 30. 40% is for employee owners. 30% is for investors. And we don't have that many investors, and we may never need that many. So that allows some more over here, and 30% for the founder. So that says the founder is willing to give away 70% or to distribute 70% of the company to the people who do the work, who build. An idea is not worth anything. It's only the execution of the idea. And we got a lot of good executors, and they deserve to be wealthy also. That's the point here. Now, I'm not going to take time, but let me tell you, we've got a very cool way. It's all approved. It's been worked through with accountants and legal and the whole thing. It's an incredibly simple, yet slick, not in a bad sense, way of bringing ownership to each person. We use that same formula back here, and to date, and people buy it. They buy it at a deep discount as permitted by the IRS, and they sign a note. They don't have to come up with the money. The company loans them the money. They give the money back. It goes back. We spend it on marketing. They end up with a note, and they end up with their stock. And every month, every 2 weeks, they look at oh yeah, I paid this much in interest on my note. So they have skin in the game. This is not a free lunch program. Does that keep them attentive to the bottom line? Does it keep them involved in decision making? You know, do you see, this thing is all full of, I wish there were time, because the beauty of this is in the feedback loops. The beauty of it isn't right here, you know, this is the simple thing. It's how all these things weave and produce these feedback, like between cells and membranes, everything. But anyway, I think I've got to stop.
It is so exciting to have consciousness be the center of the discussion about business and see how that changes the coherence of the information communicated. So thank you for that opportunity. Now, the first thing you should know about this is not a Stopacevedic construction. However, there's a disturbing similarity. This is what we're doing in Columbia Falls, Montana. And the challenge in western Montana is a great one. We have, of course, a beautiful state there. The company is Algae Aquaculture Technology, and there's a couple different connections, either algaeaqua.com, or you can go to Facebook and look up Algae Aqua. This is what everybody knows about Montana. This is my hometown. This is Missoula, Montana. Gorgeous trees, mountains. And this is what people think of when they think of Montana. But a disturbing thing has happened is climate change didn't stop at the Montana border. This is Montana too. A lot of you have probably seen this picture. This was 2007. These are the elk in the middle of a river in the Bitterroot Valley avoiding a tremendous fire, one of many, many, many that have devastated Montana. So here's the five-cornered problem. The fertilizer is used to enhance the vitality of the farmland. We need enough fresh water, we need enough fuel, and all of it needs to go to produce the food to keep people alive. This is our solution. This is the AACT biorefinery. We call it the Green Powerhouse, and we have options for all of those possibilities. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details on this. This is the basic process we're using. We use anaerobic biodigester, which are, they're all over Iowa. Everybody has a REAP grant for an anaerobic biodigester mostly to utilize either silage or animal manure. Organic carbon engine, a pyrolysis process which produces biochar, gases that can be used for electricity, diesel fuel. It can be used to produce transportation fuel, though that's not a very efficient use of algae. I think that's one of the places where the whole algae discussion has kind of gone awry. We use a photobioreactor, basically big, beautiful algae ponds, which sort of look like a lotus flower. And we convert that into all the energy, and most importantly, we convert it into fertilizer, into pure, organic, nitrogenous fertilizer, which is it's not like the stuff that you buy from the Koch brothers. but it's about 3 times the vitality of maybe like Fox Farm, which is a good organic fertilizer brand that's out there. It's all controlled by very advanced controls, and so, you know, it's a very simple process to control. We're basically replicating the natural growth cycle. Sun, prairie, pond, the biodegradation that leads to new soil. And we do that through parallel processes. This is an organic carbon engine. This is a small pyrolysis process. This is not the full-size one, but basically you melt organic matter. You do not burn it. And it melts into a very, very specific matrix. And this is basically a carbon sponge. This is biochar, which is, we call it organic carbon. Biochar has kind of gotten a funny reputation, but basically 1 centimeter of this has 500 miles of surface area. It absorbs water, it absorbs nutrients, it creates a matrix where microorganisms can live. You put a little piece of it in the ground, and 50 years later you go back and it's expanded all of its own. All of a sudden the ground is deep, and they found this first in the Amazon. You know, of course, so much of the Amazon's wiped out, and there's just nothing left except red soil, kind of looks like Mars. They go to the areas where the natives were producing biochar, 4 feet of soil. So they had these huge areas that are wiped out, then they have 5 acres of incredible growth in the middle of it. That's what this is. This is the device. Works wonderfully in the middle of the winter. One of the things we found with the farmers is they come in, the guys go, it looks okay. The wife goes, it's warm, I want one of those, honey. Because basically it's a little bit of the tropics. In the middle of the Montana winter, in the middle of the Iowa winter, you go in there, it's warm, it's 85 degrees, there's this green, lush material growing, there's this fertilizer being created, there's about a ½ acre of organic growing capacity in there, and you're growing all kinds of heirloom and special vegetables and plants and flowers and your starters for the spring. This is a huge facility, it's about 50 feet high, it's about 5,000 square feet under the roof there. This is what it looks like. This is the old lumber mill, and then off on the side there's the UFO parked at the side of the lumber mill. So people have great fun with that. This is part of the anaerobic biodigester, and you can start to see the ponds down there at the bottom. This is a more recent photo. And you can see that the ponds radiate out like the flowers, the petals of a flower, and it's a beautiful, warm, green environment. Here's one of the ponds from up above, taken from about 50 feet up. It's a 3-stage anaerobic biodigestion process. There are different bacteria that operate at different levels, and so we get both methane and hydrogen, as well as the organic fertilizer out of the multiple levels of that process. We've chosen to focus on fertilizer instead of biofuel because it's a lot better economic proposition, and the planet needs it a lot more. We probably can go to electricity for transportation. We cannot get by without a balance in our carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or enough soil. We think we're just finished our first production model. We think the payback is about 3 years for the $2 million, and that's the first iteration. So the numbers for organic fertilizer are really impressive. The thing you need to know, and actually I got the number wrong earlier today. I said 20% of food is organic. Actually, it's 20% growth per year in organic food, and the limitation is fertilizer. There's not enough fertilizer. Everybody's using cow manure, which really isn't organic anyway, but they have to kind of pretend that it's organic in order to have enough fertilizer to drive production. So we're producing something that's very, very valuable, that sells for a lot, that you can produce a lot of, that allows a farmer to produce a lot of what you need for your own utilization, that gives you a 12-month growth cycle rather than a 4-month growth cycle. If something goes wrong and the price of organic fertilizer goes down, basically anything that you can do with petrochemicals, you can do with this process. So you can do fragrances, you can do all your food additives, you can do farm feed. Basically it's a carbon factory. It's a carbon chemical factory, and it has that application. So it's a vastly better way of recycling carbon dioxide and getting more of it to stay where it's supposed to and getting benefits out of it. And then the last point is that if you take that fertilizer you're creating, put it into the ground, it's about an 8-to-1 dynamic where more carbon is drawn into the soil from the fertilizer that you put in, so you have a natural sponging effect. The other thing is, we don't have to grow that much algae because we're growing wood chips or farm biomass, which is pretty inexpensive. This is residual material, so we're not dependent on, you know, several thousand gallons of water per gallon of algal biofuel. We're not trying to grow it in Arizona where the temperature is beyond the optimal growth temperature for algae about 5 to 6 months a year. Algae doesn't want to grow over about 85 degrees usually, and you know, I mean, I've been in Phoenix when I couldn't get off the ground for 2 days because it was over 116 degrees and the planes couldn't fly. And yet they say this is an optimal place. Well, it's a lot easier to work with heating, which is what we're doing in the northern tier, than it is with air conditioning. Air conditioning is really expensive. So that's pretty much it. Algae aquaculture technology. Please feel free to give me a call. You can go to algaeaqua.com or go to Facebook and just look up Algae Aqua and you can find what we're doing. So thank you, and thanks for this.
Thank you for enjoying and participating with us on our conference symposium on deep green sustainability. We at Marsha University of Management have a passionate commitment to bringing forth a higher state of consciousness in this planet, which we feel is the key element piece for creating sustainability in business. Now, we do have partners, and we're so delighted that we had partners such as Hazel Henderson, John Eichert, Dr. Yu, Harald Harang from Norway, and others. And as you saw, we also had case studies from within Fairfield and in the Iowa area. We feel that this contribution is a beginning step towards creating a better world. And if you want more information, please contact Marsha University of Management.